Most people work hard on their job, but never hard on themselves. And that's why they stay stuck. If you want freedom, don't just act busy, act smart. Don't just spend, invest. Don't just dream, dare to act big. That's the formula for wealth. You know, life has a strange way of testing us. Most people spend their days working harder and harder, chasing after dollars, yet never stopping to ask, am I working smart or just working tired? The tragedy isn't that people fail. The tragedy is that they succeed at the wrong things. You see, money doesn't first live in the bank. It first lives in the mind. And if you don't invest in your skills, if you don't expand your capacity, you can work a lifetime and still remain broke in spirit. But the moment you decide to think bigger, to act with boldness, and to plant seeds of wisdom instead of mere labor, that's the moment financial freedom begins to chase you. The question is not, will life pay me? The question is, what am I demanding of myself so that life has no choice but to pay me richly? You know, hard work is essential. It builds character. It shapes discipline. It teaches us responsibility. A man or woman who avoids hard work misses out on one of life's great shaping tools. But let me tell you something even more important. While hard work builds character, smart work builds freedom. And freedom is what most people are really after. You can spend your entire life digging with a spoon, working harder than anyone else, sweating day and night, and yet the person who picked up a shovel will outpace you in a fraction of the time. That's the difference between effort alone and effort guided by intelligence. I remember in my early years, I was working long hours, chasing every dollar, always exhausted but never really moving ahead. Then my mentor said to me, don't just get good at spending your time, get good at investing it. That struck me. He explained that busy work can keep you occupied all day, but it won't necessarily move you closer to freedom. Answering every phone call, running every errand, saying yes to everything, those things keep you spinning, but they don't build wealth. What builds wealth is focusing on high-value activities, the kind of work that keeps paying you long after the task is finished. Think about it. Writing a book, for example, is hard work, but it's also smart work. You write it once, and it can keep paying you for years. Building a business system, that's smart work. It takes sweat and late nights, but once it's built, it runs even when you're asleep. Compare that with someone who works all day doing tasks anyone could do. They may be exhausted, but they're not free. Smart work multiplies the value of hard work. So how do you apply this in your daily life? Start with one simple practice. Each morning, sit down and make a list. Ask yourself, what are the 3 most important tasks today that will create the greatest return for my future? Not the easiest tasks, not the ones that keep you busy, but the ones that actually move the needle. Write them down and finish them first. If you conquer just 3 high-value tasks every day, your year will look entirely different from the average person's. I used to do this in the early stages of my career. Instead of spending the morning on small errands, I focused on what would bring me closer to my goals. Sometimes it was making one important phone call to a potential partner. Sometimes it was studying for an hour to sharpen my skills. Sometimes it was building a system that could run without me. Those 3 tasks, done with discipline, changed my whole financial direction. The lesson is simple. Don't confuse activity with achievement. Don't mistake movement for progress. Work hard, yes, but make sure that your hard work is multiplied by wisdom. That is the only way to transform effort into freedom. One of the greatest lessons life will ever teach you is that money is temporary, but skills are permanent. You can lose money in a bad investment, you can lose a job, you can even lose a business. But if you have cultivated the right skills, you can create wealth again and again. Money can slip through your fingers, but the ability to create value never disappears. That's why I say skills are the new currency. In my early years, I was broke, really broke. Not just in my bank account, but in my thinking. I thought if I could just find the right opportunity, money would take care of itself. But I quickly learned opportunity is wasted on the unprepared. Then a mentor reminded me, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. That single idea turned my whole world around. Instead of chasing money directly, I began chasing skills. Because skills make you valuable in any economy. Think about this. If the marketplace pays you minimum wage, it's not passing judgment on your character. It's simply a reflection of the value you bring to the table. If you want more, you must become more. The marketplace rewards people who sharpen their abilities. A skilled communicator can lead teams, inspire action, and close deals. A skilled investor can multiply a dollar where others would waste it. A skilled salesperson can write their own ticket in almost any industry. Skills are what separate the 3% who rise above from the 97% who merely get by. So how do you start building this new currency? You invest time, money, and attention into learning what the world rewards. Too many people spend hours scrolling through entertainment, but they never dedicate even 30 minutes to building themselves. Imagine what would happen if instead of one TV show a night, you read a book on persuasion, on investing, or on leadership. Imagine what would happen if you listened to an audio program on sales while driving to work. Do that for a year, and you'd outpace 90% of people in your field. Do it for 5 years, and you'd be unrecognizable compared to where you started. I remember when I decided to take sales seriously. I was nervous, shy, and untrained, but I made a commitment to study every single day. I read books. I practice conversations. I listen to tapes until the ideas became part of me. At first, progress was slow, but little by little, those 30 minutes a day compounded into confidence, into results, into income. That skill opened doors I never imagined, and once I had it, no one could take it from me. Even if I lost every dime, I could go out tomorrow and rebuild, because I had the tools inside me. So my challenge to you is simple. Decide on one skill that the marketplace rewards. Maybe it's communication, maybe it's sales, maybe it's investing, and give it just 30 minutes a day. Protect that time like it's sacred. Over months and years, you'll watch your value increase, your confidence grow, and your opportunities expand. Money is fleeting, but skills are forever. And once you possess them, you'll never have to chase opportunity again. Opportunity will start chasing you. Ideas are powerful. A single idea has the potential to change your entire life. But let me give you the truth. An idea left in the mind is nothing more than a dream, and dreams without action are just wishes. You can't deposit a wish at the bank. You can't pay your bills with intentions. Wealth doesn't grow out of good thoughts. It grows out of good actions. Action turns ideas into assets. I meet so many people who tell me their plans. They say, one day I'll start that business, or someday I'll invest when the time is right, or I've been meaning to write that book, but someday never shows up on the calendar. There is only today. And if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll wait your whole life. The perfect moment doesn't exist. What exists is the decision to start, to take the first step, even if it's small, and then to adjust as you go. I remember when I had my first opportunity to build something beyond myself. I didn't have everything figured out. I didn't have all the knowledge, and I certainly didn't have guarantees. But I knew this: if I waited until I felt ready, I would never begin. So I started small. I took one step, then another, and every mistake became a lesson. The early actions weren't perfect, but they were progress. And progress compounds. Looking back, those imperfect steps were the very foundation of my success. Here's the truth. Wealth is not built in giant leaps. It's built in steady steps. Planting a seed looks small, but given time and nurturing, it grows into a tree. The first dollar invested may seem insignificant, but compounded over years, it can create financial independence. The first sales call may be awkward, but it leads to confidence, and confidence leads to contracts, and contracts lead to income. Every fortune begins with a small action that seemed almost too small to matter at the time. So let me ask you, what wealth-building idea have you been postponing? Maybe it's starting a side business. Maybe it's opening that investment account. Maybe it's creating a new product, writing that book, or learning a new skill. Don't wait for all the lights to turn green before you leave your driveway. Take one step this week. Just one. Open the account. Make the phone call. Draft the first page. The act of beginning creates momentum, and momentum is more valuable than perfection. The people who stay broke are not always lazy. Many of them have wonderful dreams, but they never translate those dreams into disciplined action. The wealthy are not always the most talented, but they act, they move, they try, they fail, they learn, and they try again. That's the difference. So here is the closing thought. Don't let your dreams sit idle in the attic of your imagination. Bring them down, dust them off, and put them to work. Wealth will never be built on what you intend to do. It will only be built on what you actually do. Action turns ideas into assets, and this week could be the week you finally prove it to yourself. If you want to know the difference between merely surviving and truly living, it comes down to the size of your thinking. Small thinking keeps food on the table. Big thinking builds the table, fills it with abundance, and invites others to share. Small thinking produces survival. Big thinking produces freedom. The size of your future is determined by the size of your vision. I've seen it in people all my life. The ones who think only about making it through the week never escape the cycle of the week. They work hard, they pay the bills, and they repeat the pattern year after year. And there's nothing wrong with survival. But life is not meant to be survived. It's meant to be lived. To live is to stretch, to dream, to reach beyond comfort. Big thinking is uncomfortable because it demands more of us. But it's in that demand that we grow. I remember early in my journey, I used to think small myself. My goals were modest, just to earn enough to stay afloat. But then I was challenged to think bigger, to imagine a future that seemed out of reach. At first, it felt impossible. But I learned something valuable. When you think big, your mind starts to search for new solutions, new connections, and new opportunities. Big thinking expands your creativity, while small thinking shrinks it. You see, a small goal doesn't require you to grow. You can stay the same person you are today and still reach it. But a big goal forces you to become someone new. That's the secret. It's not just about what you get by aiming high, it's about who you become in the process. When you stretch your vision, you stretch your capacity. And that stretching makes you stronger, wiser, and more capable of handling wealth and freedom. So here's a challenge. Write down a 10-year vision that feels almost impossible. Don't think about what you can achieve with the resources you have now. Think about what would excite you, scare you a little, and challenge you a lot. Maybe it's financial freedom. Maybe it's building a company that impacts lives. Maybe it's creating a legacy for your family. Don't shrink it down to fit your comfort. Let it be as big as your imagination allows. And then, don't stop at dreaming. Map one action you can take today that moves you in that direction. Just one. Because even the biggest mountain is climbed one step at a time. When you commit to taking consistent steps toward a big vision, the impossible begins to bend in your favor. I'll tell you the truth. The world does not reward small thinkers. It rewards those who dare to imagine more, do more, and become more. So don't settle for survival. Stretch for freedom. Think bigger than you ever have before, and you'll find that your future will rise to meet the size of your vision. One of the greatest lessons I ever learned about wealth is that it doesn't just flow through numbers, it flows through people. Money is important, yes, but money always moves through relationships. Trust is a greater currency than money because when people trust you, opportunities will find their way to you. And when you trust the right people, you accelerate your growth in ways no balance sheet could ever calculate. I've often said, you can measure the quality of your future by the quality of the people you surround yourself with. If you spend your time with those who complain, gossip, and accept mediocrity, it won't be long before you find yourself thinking and acting the same way. But when you put yourself in the company of ambitious, disciplined, growth-driven individuals, you're lifted by their energy, their habits, and their vision. That's not philosophy, that's psychology. Human beings are shaped by association. You can't help but absorb the thinking of the people you're around most often. In the early years of my career, I was stuck in circles that thought small. Everyone around me was content with just getting by, and so was I. Then one day, I met people who thought differently. They weren't necessarily smarter than me, but they carried a hunger, a belief, a willingness to stretch themselves. Simply being in their presence forced me to raise my standards. It was like stepping into a different atmosphere. Suddenly, what seemed impossible became normal because they were doing it. That's the power of association. It changes your definition of what's possible. Wealth is not just about adding zeros to your bank account. It's about adding depth to your connections. The right network can teach you what no book can, open doors you never knew existed, and hold you accountable when you're tempted to drift. Numbers can grow cold and static, but relationships are alive. They multiply, they expand, they create leverage. One conversation with the right person can save you years of trial and error. That's why I encourage you to make a deliberate choice. Invest in networks, not just numbers. Go beyond collecting contacts. Build trust. Build genuine connections. Put yourself where people are moving forward. Join a mastermind, a group, or a community that challenges your thinking. Don't just look for comfort, look for challenge. Because growth is born in environments that stretch you. I can tell you from my own journey, every leap I made in wealth and influence was tied to a relationship. Someone taught me something I didn't know. Someone opened a door I couldn't have opened alone. Someone believed in me before I believed in myself. That's the compound interest of human connection. It grows exponentially over time. So while you're building your accounts, also build your associations. While you're investing in assets, invest in people. Because in the long run, money will follow trust, opportunity will follow character, and wealth will follow relationships. If there's one bridge between effort and wealth, it's called discipline. Without discipline, even the greatest income will slip right through your fingers. You can earn $10,000 a month, but if you spend $10,001, you're still broke. Wealth is not built by accident. It is built by choices, consistent, disciplined choices that honor your future more than your impulses. Discipline is what gives your hard work meaning. Without it, your effort simply feeds the appetite of the moment. With it, your effort builds freedom for the years to come. Think of it like a reservoir. Rain falls on everyone. Income comes to most people in some form, but the disciplined man builds a dam and stores it. The undisciplined lets it all run downstream. The difference is not the rain, The difference is the reservoir. I remember when I was starting out, I had little to my name. My expenses outweighed my income, and it seemed impossible to ever get ahead. Then my mentor shared with me a principle that changed everything. Pay yourself first, not last, not if something is left over, first. He told me, take 10% of every dollar and put it aside before you pay the landlord, before you pay the tax man, before you buy even a cup of coffee. At first, it felt impossible. How could I set money aside when I barely had enough to get by? But he reminded me, if you can't save a dime out of a dollar, you'll never save 100 out of 1,000. So I started. 10%. Small at first, but steady. And something remarkable happened. I discovered that when you discipline yourself to save and invest first, you learn to live on what remains. You force yourself to prioritize. And those small, consistent deposits began to grow. What once seemed like an impossible habit became the foundation of my financial independence. Discipline is not punishment. It is the highest form of self-respect. It's saying, I value my future enough to guard it today. Luxuries are tempting, and expenses are always waiting. But if you let them dictate your behavior, you'll always be working for money instead of letting money work for you. The disciplined individual flips that equation. Every dollar saved and invested becomes a worker in your financial army. While you sleep, those little soldiers are out there earning, multiplying, bringing more back to you, but only if you have the discipline to keep them. The tragedy is not that people don't earn enough. It's that too many spend without measure and wonder why nothing changes. Discipline doesn't care if your income is small or large. Discipline multiplies whatever you give it. 10% of a little will one day become 10% of a lot. And by then, the habit will be strong enough to secure your freedom. So, let discipline be your ally. Pay yourself first, always. Save and invest before you spend. And watch as your effort turns into wealth, your work turns into freedom, and your future turns into something far greater than your present. Financial freedom is not stumbled upon. It is not discovered like treasure buried in the sand. It is built brick by brick, habit by habit, choice by choice. Too many people wander through life waiting for luck to strike, waiting for the right lottery ticket, the magical job offer, or some sudden windfall to change everything. But freedom doesn't respond to luck. It responds to design, it responds to consistency, and it rewards those who refuse to drift. When I was young, I believed wealth belonged to the fortunate few, the ones born in the right families or connected to the right opportunities. But then I learned a truth that changed me forever. Wealth is not inherited by circumstance. It is inherited by philosophy. You must decide that financial independence will not come by chance, but by design. You must treat your future like an architect treats a blueprint. Clear, deliberate, detailed, and purposeful. Imagine building a house without a plan. You'd end up with walls in the wrong place, doors that don't fit, and a roof that leaks. Yet many people build their financial lives without any blueprint at all. They spend, save, and invest haphazardly, hoping it will somehow come together. It won't. The marketplace rewards those who are intentional. And the good news is, you don't need to start big. You just need to start with clarity. Your plan doesn't need to be complicated. Begin with 3 simple questions. How much income do I want to generate? How much will I save and invest each month? And where will I put those resources to ensure they grow? Write it down. That piece of paper becomes your compass. Review it monthly. Adjust when life changes, but never, ever leave it to chance. I remember the first time I wrote down my financial roadmap. It wasn't impressive. My income was modest, my savings small, my investments almost non-existent. But the act of putting it on paper gave me power. It made my future visible. Suddenly, I wasn't just reacting to circumstances, I was directing them. Over the years, as I followed that plan, adjusted it, and committed to it, I saw the compound effect take root. What was once a small trickle became a steady stream. What was once a stream became a river, and eventually, that river turned into a reservoir that gave me freedom. That's the magic of design. Even the smallest beginnings, when directed with intention, grow into something extraordinary. But here's the warning. A plan only works if you stick to it. Too many people write down goals and then tuck them away like a forgotten notebook. The plan must live with you. It must guide your daily spending, your saving, and your investing. It must be your constant reminder that wealth is not built in a day, but over many days of deliberate action. So let me leave you with this. Don't wait for fortune to knock on your door. Don't hope for luck to rewrite your story. Pick up the pen, draft your financial roadmap, review it faithfully, and follow it with discipline. Freedom is not found, it is built. And you, brick by brick, have the power to build it. Money is a wonderful servant, but it is a terrible master. If you don't learn to manage it, I promise you, it will end up managing you. It doesn't matter how much you earn. If you can't direct it with wisdom, it will slip away into the cracks of impulse, habit, and neglect. Wealth is not built on amounts alone. It is built on discipline. I've met people who earn a modest income, yet live with dignity, security, and growing wealth because they know where every dollar goes. And I've met others who earn fortunes, yet live in constant debt, pressure, and fear because their money is in charge of them, not the other way around. The truth is simple. The amount matters far less than the stewardship. A leaky bucket doesn't hold more water just because you pour more into it. Until you patch the holes, the bucket will always empty. In my own life, I learned this lesson the hard way. When I first began making a little extra income, I thought more money would solve all my problems. It didn't. In fact, without management, more money only magnifies your habits. If you waste when you have little, you'll waste even more when you have much. The habit doesn't change with the amount, it only scales. That's why one of the simplest yet most powerful exercises you can do is to track every expense for 30 days. Write it down, every coffee, every subscription, every impulse purchase. At the end of those 30 days, you'll see the truth in black and white, and that truth may shock you. The small leaks you never noticed are often the very reasons your financial reservoir never fills. Now, once you've written it all down, here's the next step. Choose one unnecessary habit and redirect it. Maybe it's a luxury you don't need, a convenience you overpay for, or a pattern that doesn't serve your future. Cut just one and take that money, whether it's $10 or $100, and redirect it into an asset. Put it into savings, an investment, or a skill that increases your earning capacity. What you've done in that moment is profound. You've shifted money from serving your impulses to serving your freedom. This is how wealth is built. Not in giant leaps, but in small, disciplined choices that compound over time. And the beauty of it is that once you start managing money, even a small amount, you begin to feel in control. That sense of control builds confidence, and confidence fuels discipline. Before long, you're not just surviving your finances, you're directing them with purpose. So remember this, money will either obey you or it will own you. The choice is yours. Write down every expense, patch the leaks, redirect the flow, and watch as your money becomes your servant, building your future instead of robbing it. One of the greatest shifts in my life came the day I understood the difference between owning and owing. Debt makes you a servant. Ownership makes you free. When you owe, you work for someone else's dream. When you own, you work for your own. And that difference will shape the way you live every day of your life. Now, let me be clear. Not all debt is created equal. There's debt that enslaves you, and there's debt that leverages you. But most of what people carry today isn't leverage, it's bondage. Credit cards, car payments, high interest loans, these things don't buy you freedom, they buy you stress. They chain your future to decisions you made in the past. And every month, instead of your money working for you, it's working for the lender. That's why I tell people, if you ever want true freedom, the first step is to stop renting your life to debt. I remember a time when I was drowning in bills, juggling what to pay first, and feeling the pressure of owing more than I owned. My mentor sat me down and said, "You've got to flip the equation. Stop working for the bank and start working for yourself." That advice cut deep. I realized my income was being drained into things that gave me no lasting value. A dinner out was forgotten in hours, but the debt stayed for months. A shiny gadget lost its shine, but the payments lingered long after. So, I started small. I picked one little debt, something I could pay off quickly, and I attacked it with focus. The moment that debt was gone, I took the exact payment I had been sending to the creditor and redirected it into an investment account. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And that shift changed everything. I felt a spark of ownership. That account grew little by little, and with each deposit, I felt freer, stronger, more in control. That's the key. Ownership compounds just like debt does. One drags you down month after month, while the other lifts you up year after year. The trick is to eliminate the first and accelerate the second. Instead of financing your lifestyle, start financing your freedom. Instead of paying interest, start earning it. And here's the beauty. Once you taste ownership, once you see your name on something that grows and multiplies, the desire to go back to owing disappears. Freedom isn't about fancy things. Freedom is the ability to decide, to choose how you spend your time, where you put your energy, and what kind of future you build. And that begins by breaking the chains of debt and embracing the power of ownership. So take this step now. Choose one small debt, pay it off this month, and redirect that payment into an investment that belongs to you. When you do, you'll feel the shift. You'll stop being a servant to debt and start becoming a master of your financial destiny. One of the most dangerous traps I've seen people fall into is upgrading their lifestyle before upgrading their assets. The poor, and even the middle class, often live by the rule of, look rich now, figure out the rest later. They want the car, the gadgets, the vacations, the lifestyle that shows off success before success has even been earned. And the cost of that choice? Years of debt, stress, and financial struggle. The wealthy live by a different rule. They understand that lifestyle follows assets, not the other way around. Now, this doesn't mean you deny yourself every pleasure forever. Life is meant to be enjoyed. But there's a sequence to wealth, and when you get it wrong, you pay a heavy price. I remember when I was younger, I thought buying something nice would make me feel successful. And for a few hours, maybe even a few days, it did. But then came the payments, the pressure, the nagging thought that I had traded future freedom for temporary pleasure. That's when I learned, don't let your lifestyle outpace your assets. The wealthy delay the upgrade. They wait until their investments, their businesses, their assets generate enough income to pay for the luxuries. They don't use wages for toys, they use wages to buy assets. And then those assets, over time, pay for the toys. That's how they stay free. You see, a poor man buys a car and works for it. A rich man builds an asset and lets it buy the car for him. The difference is enormous, not just financially, but mentally. One becomes a servant to things, while the other remains master over them. Here's a practical rule that changed my life. Before you buy a luxury, build an asset that produces enough to cover it. Want a nicer car? First build an investment that generates the monthly payment. Dreaming of a vacation? Create a side hustle that pays for it. That way, you're not stealing from your future, you're funding it. And here's the wonderful part. Once you start thinking this way, every purchase becomes an opportunity. You don't just ask, how much does this cost? You ask, what can I build that will pay for this? That question alone shifts your focus from consumption to creation, from spending to investing. I recall when I wanted to upgrade my home, instead of taking on a bigger mortgage immediately, I focused on building a rental property that would generate steady cash flow. When the time came to make the move, I didn't feel the weight of the new payment because the asset carried it for me. That's freedom. That's how the wealthy live. So let me remind you, lifestyle is the reward, not the foundation. Assets are the foundation. If you build them first, your lifestyle will expand naturally, effortlessly, without chains attached. But if you chase the lifestyle first, you'll find yourself trapped in a cycle of working harder and harder just to maintain appearances. Build the assets, let them pay for the luxuries, and you'll discover the real joy of wealth, freedom without fear. There comes a time in every person's life when energy runs low, when the body slows down, and when time no longer feels endless. No matter how disciplined, no matter how hardworking, our physical effort has limits. And that's why the wise understand a simple truth. Assets outlive effort. You can work long hours, you can push yourself to the maximum, but one day you won't be able to. The question is, when that day comes, will something else be working for you? I've met many people who thought they could work their way to wealth. And while hard work is honorable, it's not enough. You see, work is like a candle. It burns bright for a while, but eventually the wax runs out. Assets, on the other hand, are like the sundae. They rise again and again, giving light and energy long after your own candle has burned low. That's why I tell people, don't just build income, build assets that keep producing when you can't. I remember a time when I was running from job to job, giving every ounce of energy I had, and yet at the end of the month, I was no further ahead. It hit me that if I stopped working, everything stopped. My income, my progress, my security, it was all tied to my presence. That realization was both frightening and liberating. Frightening because I saw the trap I was in. Liberating because I understood the solution. Create something that lives beyond my effort. So I started small. I bought a few dividend-paying stocks. It wasn't much, but I noticed something incredible. While I was sleeping, those stocks were still at work. While I was resting, they were quietly producing. Later, I invested in a small rental property. That property paid me every month, whether I was working or not. I even created a product that once built kept selling over and over again. These were assets, extensions of my effort that outlived the hours I put in. And here's the point. You don't need a fortune to begin. You just need the decision to start. Start with one small project this month. It might be a rental if you've got the resources, or a dividend stock if you're just beginning. Maybe it's a digital product, a book, a course, a design that once created continues to pay. The size doesn't matter at first. What matters is building the habit of creating streams of income not tied to your hours. Because one day, you'll want the choice to slow down, to rest, to step back. And when that day comes, if you've built assets, you'll discover a powerful truth. Your wealth keeps working even when you don't. That's freedom. That's security. That's the reward of thinking ahead. Remember, your body has limits, but your assets don't. Build them wisely, and they will serve you long after your effort has ended. True wealth isn't measured by what you gather in one lifetime. It's measured by what continues after you. Anyone can make a little money for a season, but real wealth, lasting wealth, is generational. It's not about how much you consume while you're here, but how much you create that lives on when you're gone. The wealthy understand this. They don't just build for themselves, they build for their children and their children's children. They know that wealth is not seasonal, it's generational. When I was younger, I thought the purpose of money was to meet my needs, to buy the things I wanted, to enjoy life while I could. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying life. But then I noticed something. The families who seemed unshakable financially weren't the ones who lived the flashiest lives. They were the ones who passed on not just money, but values, habits, and principles. Their children didn't have to start from scratch. They were handed a foundation, a springboard, something to build upon. That's when I realized, if you want to be truly wealthy, don't just think about your life, think about your legacy. Now, some people will say, but I don't have much to leave. And I tell them, it's not just about money, it's about mindset. Teach your children the principle of paying themselves first. Show them the value of discipline, the power of saving, the importance of ownership. Those lessons are worth more than any inheritance check. Because if you give someone money without principles, they'll lose it. But if you give them principles, they'll know how to create money again and again. I made it a practice to share my wealth-building plan with my family. It wasn't complicated, just a simple roadmap. Here's how we save, here's how we invest, here's how we manage expenses, and I explained why. I wanted them to see not just the numbers, but the philosophy behind the numbers. Because wealth is not a secret to hide, it's a story to pass on. When you bring your family into the process, you're not just securing their future, you're teaching them to secure their own. So here's the practical step I urge you to take. Write down a simple wealth-building plan today and share it with your family. Don't wait until it's perfect. Don't wait until you feel rich. Start with what you know, with what you practice, with what you believe. Let them see how you think about money, how you prioritize assets over consumption, how you design a life of freedom instead of bondage. That written plan will become a seed, and if watered with discipline and example, it will grow into something far bigger than you. Remember this, the season you live in is temporary, but the legacy you build can last for generations. Wealth is not about a single harvest. It's about planting orchards that will feed your family for years to come. Think generational, not seasonal, and your influence will outlive your lifetime. My friends, wealth is not a mystery, and it's certainly not reserved for the lucky few. It is a design built step by step, choice by choice, day by day. The difference between those who struggle and those who thrive is not talent or opportunity, but philosophy and discipline. If you adopt the right mindset, practice the right habits, and commit to consistency, financial freedom is no longer a dream, it becomes inevitable. But remember this, knowledge alone changes nothing. Ideas unacted upon remain wishes. Wealth is built by those who take the first step, however small, and keep stepping until momentum takes over. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. You don't need to do everything at once. Just start with one act of discipline today. Track your expenses, pay yourself first, invest in your skills, write down a goal, teach someone else what you've learned. The future belongs to those who take responsibility for it. So decide today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. Take the first step toward becoming the kind of person who doesn't just earn money, but creates freedom, builds legacy, and changes generations. Your wealth story begins now. Make it count.